Hey, this is John. I've got another quick RPG review for you from a book off my Game Master's bookshelf. Today I've got the World Builder's Guidebook, and this is an out-of-print book from old TSR days, second edition days, and if you have a chance to get this book, snap it up right away. I think there's some copies that you can find online. I think I found one on Scribd today when I did a quick Google. But if you have a chance to get your hands on it, definitely grab it. This is a soup to nuts process or way to build a world. They guide you through all the steps of building a complete D&D type of world. It has a lot of tables in it. The tables are quite technical, and I find them a bit dry. So they're not random generation inspiration tables per se, but they will get you through the technical aspects of building a world. Things like historical cultures, a listing of those. Things like climatic regions in your various hemispheres, and all sorts of things like precipitation and hydrology, things like that. So there's lots of information packed in this book. What I like about this book is that it is a procedural book. It's a procedural book in that it allows you to build a world by following the steps, step by step. Draw the continents, figure out the air patterns, which will then determine, in combination with mountains, the rainfall, that kind of a thing. The book also came with a bunch of handouts. And so there's several copies of each. So there's about half a dozen handouts in all. And the first one you see is a map. You draw your map on here, and then you can make it into a globe. And this is for your regional zones, Arctic and subarctic and tundra and things like that. And then further on in the book, graph paper for you to draw whatever scale of region it is that you're drawing, whether it's a city or a kingdom or a continent. And then towards the rear of the book are forms for various things like cities and kingdoms and continents. The forms are like giant stat blocks, so they're not procedural, but then the book explains how to fill them out. Overall, I find the information in the book is fairly simple, so you won't get into deep scientific explanations, but it will get you through the process. I'm building a world right now, so that's why I've picked this book off my bookshelf, and we'll be going through it. And if I find any excellent tips from it, I will definitely be including them in the new newsletter. And the thing I like the most about this book is what they call the approaches. So they define 5 different approaches for building a world. And what they mean by this is, where is your starting momentum coming from? It doesn't have to be top down, and it doesn't have to be bottom up. And they've identified 5 of the most common ways that world builders start, or 5 of the most common seeds that germinate in world builders that make them want to flesh out the world, or that are their starting points for fleshing out the world. So this is on the table of contents, and the book has been designed, and they show you how that to start in whatever chapter your seed type is, and then you work outward from that chapter. So for example, chapter 5 is cities and provinces. So if you have an idea to recreate the city of Lankmar, then you start off in chapter 5, and then you go to 4, 3, 2, and 1. Or you could go start in 5 and then go into the other chapters in any order that you wanted. So chapter 2 is worlds and planetology. So you actually get into the physical construction of a planet. Chapter 3 is continents and geography. So here you get into weather patterns and continental drift, mountains, how lakes form, that kind of a thing. Chapter 4 is about cultures. So if you have an idea for, let's say, the culture of silly dwarves, then you would start in this chapter and then build your world out from that idea. And then in 5, I would rename chapter 5 to civilization. And if you have a culture, or if you have an idea for a kingdom or a town or a dungeon, a very specific location, then you start here and you work outwards from that. And chapter 6 is history and mythology. Anyways, you start with history or mythology. You want to recreate Egypt, or you want to start off with cosmology, which is where I'm going to be starting my world from. I always like to know I always like to start at step 0, the real 0, which is how was the universe created, and move forward from that. So they also relate several of the Hasbro, WotC, TSR properties or worlds to the process. So they relate which approach that Hickman took when he was building Krynn for Dragonlance, or Greyhawk, or Forgotten Realms. So each of the worlds are in mentioning, just in passing, which approach that creator took. And then the sequence, whether they started with a technical, scientific world building top down, or they started with the gods, or they started with a plot idea, that kind of thing. Great book. Get your hands on it if you can. Thanks.